Brian Wilson, A Life of Genius, Turmoil, and Redemption. Brian Douglas Wilson was born on June 20, 1942 in Inglewood, California, the first of 3 sons to Murray and Audrey Wilson. Raised in nearby Hawthorne, Brian displayed an extraordinary gift for music from an early age. He could pick out harmonies and melodies by ear, and by the time he was a teenager, he was already experimenting with complex vocal arrangements, heavily influenced by 4 freshmen, George Gershwin and Chuck Berry. His father, Murray, was a frustrated musician and aspiring songwriter who both encouraged and abused his sons, leaving a lasting psychological impact on Brian. Though Murray helped launch his son's musical career, he was also domineering and emotionally volatile, traits that haunted Brian for decades. The formation of the Beach Boys, 1961 to 1963. In 1961, Brian formed a band with his younger brothers Dennis and Carl, his cousin Mike Love, and his friend Al Jardine. This group became the Beach Boys, capturing California's surf culture and sun-soaked lifestyle in their early hits. Brian, the band's primary songwriter and producer, quickly distinguished himself with his knack for lush harmonies and catchy melodies. Hits like Surfin' Safari 1962, Surfin' USA 1963, Fun, Fun, Fun 1964, I Get Around 1964, catapulted the group to fame. By the mid-1960s, they were America's answer to the Beatles. Creative Heights and Pet Sounds 1964 to 1966. By 1964, Brian retired from touring to focus exclusively on writing and producing. During this time, he began experimenting more boldly, drawing inspiration from classical music, jazz, and Phil Spector's Wall of Sound production style. In 1966, he released his magnum opus, Pet Sounds. This album marked a turning point in pop history. It featured deeply personal lyrics, complex orchestration, and emotional depth. Songs like God Only Knows, Wouldn't It Be Nice, and Caroline, No redefined what pop music could be. Pet Sounds influenced the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which Paul McCartney has said was inspired by Pet Sounds. The same year, Brian produced the epic single Good Vibrations, a song that took months to record in pieces and reassemble. It showcased his genius for layered, modular recording and remains one of the most important singles in music history. The Smile Project and Decline, 1966 to 1971. Following Pet Sounds, Wilson began work on an even more ambitious project, Smile, which he called A Teenage Symphony to God. However, the pressure, combined with worsening mental health and substance abuse, led to the project's collapse in 1967. Brian became increasingly isolated. He suffered from auditory hallucinations and paranoia. He gained significant weight and spent long periods in bed. He withdrew from the public eye while the Beach Boys carried on without him. Despite these struggles, he contributed sporadically to albums like Surf's Up 1971 and Holland 1973, though he was no longer the group's driving force. Years in the Wilderness 1970s, 1980s. Brian's condition worsened throughout the 1970s and early 1980s. He was often manipulated by those around him, including his controversial therapist Dr. Eugene Landy, who gained legal control over many aspects of Brian's life, including his finances and music career. Landy's treatment was unorthodox and widely criticized. Though it brought temporary improvements, it also involved over-medication and emotional manipulation. By the late 1980s, Landy was court-ordered to sever ties with Wilson. During this period, Brian released his first solo album, Brian Wilson, 1988, which showed glimpses of his old genius but was clouded by psychological instability and overproduction. Revival and Redemption, 1990s, 2000s. Freed from Landy and with new support from his second wife Melinda Ledbetter, whom he married in 1995, Brian began a remarkable recovery. Key milestones in this era. 1995, released I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, a documentary and accompanying soundtrack that reintroduced his genius to a new generation. 1998, released Imagination, a hopeful and melodically rich solo album. 2004, completed and released Brian Wilson Presents Smile, a full version of his lost 1967 masterpiece. It received critical acclaim and won a Grammy. This period marked one of the most astonishing comebacks in music history. Wilson went from near-total obscurity and illness to international acclaim and celebration. Later career, 2010s, 2020s. Brian continued touring and releasing music well into his 70s. Notable projects included That Lucky Old Sun, 2008, a nostalgic concept album about California life. No Peer Pressure, 2015, collaborations with younger artists like Zooey Deschanel and Nate Ruess. Brian Wilson, Long Promised Road, 2021, an intimate documentary detailing his life and inner world. Despite his ongoing struggles with mental illness, Brian remained creatively active, consistently revered by artists and fans alike. Personal life and legacy. Brian and Melinda adopted 5 children together and built a loving family, a far cry from the chaos of his earlier years. His legacy is profound. Credited with transforming pop music into a serious art form. Inspired generations of musicians including the Beatles, Radiohead, and Kanye West. Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 1988 as a Beach Boy. Honored with the Kennedy Center Award 2007. Often listed among the greatest songwriters and producers in music history. Themes of his life. Brian Wilson's life is not just a tale of musical genius, it's a story of survival, redemption, and the enduring power of art. His music explored everything from teenage joy to spiritual longing and mental anguish, always wrapped in transcendent harmonies and deep emotional truth. Psychological overview. Brian Wilson has openly discussed living with schizoaffective disorder, anxiety, and depression compounded by auditory hallucinations. His life has swung between intense creativity and withdrawal, deeply influencing his music. 1. Emotional vulnerability in music. Early hits, behind upbeat songs like Surfin' USA, lay hints of deeper emotional depth. Pet Sounds 1966 marked a turning point. Tracks like I Just Wasn't Made for These Times and Caroline, No exposed his sense of alienation and spiritual yearning. Experimental sounds reflected his inner turmoil. Impact. Wilson brought emotional honesty to pop, inspiring introspection in a genre once defined by simplicity. 2. Sound as a reflection of mental states. Good Vibrations 1966, a fragmented pocket symphony symbolizing his disjointed mental state. Smile 1966-67 completed 2004, a spiritual, surreal journey filled with abrupt shifts and mysticism, mirroring his breakdown during its creation. Impact. His breakdown paralleled the collapse of Smile, both an artistic and psychological crisis. 3. Silence and withdrawal. From the late 60s to the 80s, Wilson became reclusive. Projects like Mount Vernon and Fairway reflected a retreat into a childlike, dreamlike state. Music became painful rather than healing. Mental state, deep depression left him inactive and detached. 4. Recovery and rediscovery. 1990s present, with support from his wife Melinda, Wilson returned to music. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times 1995 explored his past with honesty. Smile 2004 was finally completed, a major personal and artistic victory. That Lucky Old Sun 2008 showed a more stable, hopeful outlook. Today, though still affected by mental illness, Brian found meaning in creation and connection. Quotes, "Music is God's voice. That's why it feels so good." Brian Wilson. Pet Sounds was like Brian's soul coming out. Paul McCartney. He lives in his own world, filled with the most beautiful music. Melinda Wilson. Summary. Aspect influence. Themes loneliness, isolation, spiritual depth. Style fragmented, emotional, experimental. Sound haunting instruments, layered harmonies. Process perfectionism, mental instability. Legacy, a body of work that voices inner struggle and hope. Brian Wilson's music is a brave, beautiful chronicle of a mind in pain, but also in pursuit of peace. It stands as a testament to the healing power of sound and vulnerability.